Over the past 10 years, I have tried a lot of different monitor setups. I have tried single monitor setups, multiple monitor setups, 16:9 monitors, 21:9 monitors, and even some OLED TVs. And while many of them felt decent, I always felt like something was missing. However, since this 57-inch beast landed on my desk about a year ago, I think I have found something close to the ultimate productivity setup. But as magical as this monitor has been, it has not been perfect. And a few things about this monitor has been downright annoying. In this video, I will walk you through the good, the bad, and also the ugly experiences I've had with this monitor over the past year. I will also share some tips and features that have really helped me get the most out of this monitor, and hopefully they can help you as well, whether you already have this monitor at home or if you are thinking about purchasing it. I won't be diving deep into the specifications of this monitor in this video, as there are plenty of great reviews out there already for that. But let's just quickly cover them for some context. As you might already know, this is actually the first dual 4K monitor in the world, which means it has a resolution of 7680 x 2160 pixels. All of this is crammed into a 57-inch display, which is like having two 32-inch 4K monitors side by side. It has an aggressive 1000R curve, a quantum mini LED VA panel with 2392 dimming zones, a 240Hz refresh rate, HDR 1000 certification, 1 millisecond response time, and a color accurate 10-bit panel covering around 90% of DCI-P3. Then there are 3 HDMI 2.1 ports, 1 DisplayPort 2.1, and finally a built-in USB hub with 2 ports plus a KVM switch. Now that the specs are out of the way, let's dive into the good stuff, starting with the resolution. Honestly, I don't think I can ever go back to a low resolution after using this monitor. Compared to my previous 21:9 monitors with a 3440 x 1440 resolution, this one basically doubles the horizontal pixels available and adds another 50% vertically. And wow, you can definitely feel the difference. The amount of content that you can fit on this screen is actually kind of mind-boggling. And with a pixel density of 140 ppi, everything stays super sharp, even when sitting close up like I am at about 60 centimeters or 24 inches from the screen. For me, 57-inch and 140 ppi seems like the sweet spot between resolution and size. Anything higher in terms of ppi, and the text and UI elements would probably appear too small without scaling. Now, the massive resolution brings me to one of the features that I didn't think I would use in the first place, but has actually turned out to solve one of the pain points I've always had with ultra-wide monitors like this one. Namely, picture-by-picture mode. Picture-by-picture lets you split the monitor into multiple sections and display different input sources at the same time. With the latest firmware update, this monitor can show up to 3 separate input sources at once. Now, picture-in-picture isn't anything new. It's been around for quite some time on ultra-wide monitors. But I always found it pretty gimmicky on 21:9 monitors, simply because splitting a 3440 x 1440 resolution into 2 sections or more just felt way too cramped. That's just not the case with this monitor. After playing around with different layouts, I've settled on splitting the monitor into 3 sections, a 16:9 4K screen in the middle and 2 8:9 screens on the sides. The 16:9 4K section in the middle is plenty enough for my main tasks as an automation developer by day. I then use the 2 8:9 side sections for things like Teams, Outlook, or reading documentation. Basically the stuff that doesn't require my full attention for extended periods of time. Using this layout reduces the amount of head turning I have to do, which is a big ergonomic win, something I will get into later. Then I have actually hooked up 2 separate display cables to my work laptop, and a third cable goes to my MacBook Pro for personal use during breaks. So then why would you connect 2 separate cables to one single computer, you might ask? That seems a bit stupid. Well, if you have ever tried to share a 21:9 or 32:9 screen during a Teams or Skype meeting, you know how frustrating that is. As most people are still using 16:9 displays today, they end up seeing almost nothing. Everything is just too small. So what most of us end up doing instead is sharing individual windows instead of the whole screen. But to be honest, that's just such a pain, especially when you constantly have to switch between applications and windows. By connecting 2 separate display cables from my work laptop, the monitor is actually treated as 2 separate monitors. This way, I have a 16:9 screen that I can easily share with my colleagues, and I can zoom in when needed, as the
4K resolution can still make things appear a bit tiny to my colleagues. It may sound trivial, but as someone who does a lot of screen sharing and pair programming in my day-to-day job, this simple change has been a game changer for me. And if I need more horizontal workspace, I can still just stretch windows across the screens because there's basically no bezels between them. And that means I get the best of both worlds. I get tons of horizontal space with none of the headaches that used to come with screen sharing on ultrawides. Another thing that kind of caught me by surprise with this monitor is the panel itself. I've used both QD OLED monitors from Alienware and an LG C2 OLED TV in my previous setups, so I know how addictive those deep black levels and infinite contrast ratios on OLED panels can be. And while OLED will always have better contrast ratios and blacks than VA panels and IPS panels, this panel gets impressively close. The blacks are super deep, and although you might spot some blooming when bright objects are displayed against black backgrounds, especially if you're viewing the monitor at an angle, I hardly ever notice it during regular use or when watching content. In fact, I'm constantly impressed by how good the contrast and blacks are on this monitor. For me, mini LED panels just seem like the better choice for productivity, at least for now. You get almost OLED level blacks, great contrast and excellent text clarity, but without the worry of screen retention or burn-in. With my old OLED monitors, I was always stressing about static elements on screen, running pixel refresh programs, and basically babying my display in general. Plus, I don't get the eye strain I always used to get from color fringing and blurry text that comes with many of the sub-pixel layouts on OLED panels today. Until these OLED issues get sorted out or micro LED panels drop in price and become more accessible, mini LED just seems like the better option for productivity. So what has been less perfect with this monitor over the past 6 months? Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is of course the size of this thing. I knew that the monitor was massive, but a few things actually caught me off guard anyways. And one thing I didn't expect was just how big the stand would be. With a depth of 42.5 centimeters or 16.7 inches, it actually took up more than 2/3 of my desk. So the first thing I realized was that I needed to get a monitor arm, which is something I highly recommend to anyone thinking about getting this monitor. Not only does it free up a ton of desk space, but it also lets you push back the screen a bit, which you will definitely appreciate, even if your desk is a bit on the deeper side. Combined with the aggressive 1000R curve, this monitor actually works surprisingly well on shallow desks like mine. However, even if you have a deeper desk, let's say 80 centimeters or 31.5 inches deep, be prepared to turn your head a lot. I was expecting this when I bought the monitor, but what I didn't expect, however, was how my neck and upper back would feel about it. Unfortunately, I've experienced quite a lot of back and neck discomfort over the past 6 months. That's actually one of the reasons I started experimenting with the picture-by-picture mode in the first place, just to avoid constantly turning my head and try to keep my focus on the middle section of the screen. It was this that led me to discover the other great benefits of actually splitting the monitor into multiple separate screens. Even if you're sticking with the single cable setup and using built-in window management tools in Windows or Mac OS, I would still recommend using a layout like the one I mentioned before. It helps to reduce head movement, and trust me, your neck and back will thank you later. One thing that I have really started to miss from my previous monitors is USB-C. It may sound like a small thing, but it feels like going back like a decade in time when I suddenly have to hook up an HDMI cable to my laptop, plus a separate cable for charging, and then another one for the built-in KVM switch and USB hub. Because of that, I've actually stopped using the KVM switch and USB hub altogether. If Samsung would have included USB-C, I think that this monitor would actually have attracted a lot more customers than just hardcore gamers, and leaving it out feels like a missed opportunity and honestly a bit cheap. Another thing I'm not too crazy about is the design, and I get it, this is a monitor aimed at gamers, so it's really hard to complain about this, and yeah, I understand that these design choices are backed by market research, so there's definitely an audience for this kind of look. But it's just not for me. The RGB lighting and the Star Trek vibes don't really do it for me, and I don't know, maybe I'm just getting old, but I would have liked a more minimalist and clean design. Alright, we're almost done with my complaints about this otherwise great monitor, but before we wrap up, let's talk about the really annoying stuff. Pretty much every day when I turn on or wake up my MacBook Pro, the monitor just doesn't pick up that the device is sending a signal. And even when I manually cycle through the inputs, I still get hit with this no signal message, which honestly has come to like haunt me in my dreams. Sometimes I fix it by waking up and putting the device back to sleep a couple of times. Other times I have to turn off the monitor off and on again. And occasionally it just starts working out of nowhere and I have no clue what is going on.
For some reason, this doesn't seem to affect my PC, so it might just be a macOS related thing. After digging around in forums and watching other reviews, it seems like this is quite a common problem with Samsung monitors. And I just really hope that they sort it out soon, maybe through a firmware update or something. But yeah, it's super frustrating and it definitely takes away from the overall experience. So after almost 1 year with this monitor, what is my final verdict?
Honestly, I just love this monitor. The resolution is still unmatched a year after it came out, but it's not without its flaws. The massive size has definitely caused some ergonomic issues, at least for me. And then there's the lack of USB-C. It kind of makes it feel a little outdated, even though it's cutting edge in so many other ways, which is a weird mix to be honest.
And then finally there's the input signal detection issues I've experienced with my MacBook Pro, which I still haven't been able to find a fix for, and that does take away from the overall experience, unfortunately.
That said, until I find a monitor with the same resolution, USB-C and a more minimalist design, this one is certainly sticking around in my home office. Assuming my neck and back can handle it, of course.
Which unfortunately is something I am starting to doubt. But one thing is for sure, this is without a doubt the best monitor I have ever used for productivity.